away the words that said Declaration of Independence that just listed through what was going on then, you'd say, well, that's happening today. That's happening today. Doing things, being more aggressive than they should be allowed to do. So, how do I stop that? Well, turns out that a guy named Mark Levin, show of hands, how many people have heard of Mark Levin? So Mark Levin wrote a book. It literally came out 1 week. So he'd been writing for about 2 years to make the book. Started about 5 years ago, just recently, 3rd anniversary of this one. He announced his book 1 week before this convention of states. The two guys live 7 miles apart from each other. They did not know that the other guy was doing this one. Mark Meckler is a person, he started the homeschooling foundation and took he took the bill all the way up to the Supreme Court because they said you can't have homeschooling. He actually fought it and won, so a case was brought up there. We can now do homeschooling in all 50 states. So that's the chops for the guy that did that, Mark Meckler.
He was also part of starting
Tea Party. The Tea Party, the largest grouping of the Tea Party, Mark Meckler is doing that one. So here's the short version of it. The federal government is out of control. How many people think that the federal government's out of control? All right. How do we stop it? We can elect good people. We'll start with Dan. We'll bring over here the judges in here. Those are all important. Remember, we've got 3 separate states. We've got the executive. We're hoping for some sanity to come up with the presidency. We've got our representatives, both Congress, the Senate as well as legislature. And then we also have Supreme Court justices and stuff like that. If I wanted to change the Constitution, how many votes does it take to change the Constitution today?
3 votes where? 3/4 of the
37. 37.
On paper, it's 38 states. 38 states can propose an amendment or do an amendment. You know how many it really takes? Only 5 votes. Who are those 5 people?
Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Should the Supreme Court, over the last 100 years, starting literally in 1898, so a little bit over that, they started saying, no, that's not really it. It means this, it means this. So those 5 guys, how many Supreme Court justices do we have right now? 8. What happens with Justice Alito dying? What happens if Hillary gets in there?
Oh my God.
It doesn't matter whether Hillary is in there for only 4 years. If she appoints a Supreme Court justice, how long will that Supreme Court justice be there?
For life.
Forever.
For life, 30 years. How many people have got, 10, 15-year-old kid? Imagine having that kid wait until they're 45 before they can legally carry a gun again. It could happen that way. So how do we stop that? Should the Supreme Court be there for life?
No.
How about if you wanted to be in Senate for 50 years, 50 years?
No.
I'm sorry, we've already got that. The guy's name is Thad Cochran. Thad Cochran is a senator from Mississippi. He will finish his term at 50 years.
Right. Robert Byrd was there for a long time.
We have historical content. We've got guys that have been there for 1,000 years, seemingly. Here's the deal. Mark Levin, in his book, Liberty Amendments, came up with a solution. He proposes a convention of states to go and say, let's propose an amendment to the Constitution. How many amendments do we have? 27. You were right. I knew you were thinking of that last one. 27 amendments, but we've been doing this for 240 years. It's not like this is a runaway, oh my God, we're all going to do this one. This is a very concise, very short thing. Short version. You have to have 34 states all saying, we want to call a convention for exactly the same thing. The closest that we got to this one was the Balanced Budget Amendment. We got to 31 states. We needed 34 to start the engine. We got to 31 states to say, hey, let's talk about balanced budget. We had a handful of states that said balanced budget and bananas. Balanced budget and dancing girls. It was and. I need a white car. Everybody think of a white car. How many wheels? Okay? But see, you didn't know. My white car has driving on the right-hand side. None of you were thinking of that. That was the problem. The balanced budget amendment had a few little tweaks. Texas said this, Alabama said that, etc. Our proposal is to call it for 3 categories, not a specific amendment, but 3 categories. Those are very simply stated. The first one is fiscal responsibility. In the last 20 years, we have doubled the national debt 2 times. 20 years ago, it was $5 trillion. 10 years ago, it was $10 trillion. It's just shy of $20 trillion, and I anticipate it to be $20 trillion. Doubled 2 times in 20 years. Now, have the Democrats been in charge of all that? Believe it or not, 77 to 2007, or I'm sorry, I had with the numbers, 98 to 2007, something like that. All Republicans, all 3 pieces, all Republicans. We've done it to ourselves. Republicans love to go there. So how do we stop that? Elect the right guys. Absolutely, that's a good start. But what happens if we get somebody like John McCain? He's been in there 20 plus years. I'm a Republican until he votes. So one of the proposals is term limits, not only for Supreme Court judges, but also for members of Congress. I'm using this as a foil. These have not been voted on. Governor Greg Abbott from Texas has his 9-point plan. Convention of States is trying to say we want to do 3 things: fiscal responsibility,